Welcome to Henry's Library. I'm your host, Jackie Douge. Grown-ups, before we get started, there's a brief message from our sponsors, but then we'll be right back to start today's story. Hey grown-ups, this episode of Henry's Library is brought to you by two children's book series by Ashaunta Media, the Good Night series and the Care series featuring their newest book, What Are Tears for Mama? Ashaunta Media is a Latino-owned media company focusing on creating diverse STEAM educational content from K to career. Their Good Night series lets your kids' dreams take them out of this world, travel to different planets, learn about health, and making the world a better place. The Care series is designed to help parents answer the questions of when, where, why, and how for social and emotional learning. The first book in the series is What Are Tears for Mama? The books are available in English, Spanish, and bilingual versions, including Asdari and Pashto, to provide support to Afghani refugee families in the States. To buy your copy of What Are Tears for Mama or any other of their titles, go to adastra.com/shop. Let's get started with today's adventure, Fly Like a Bird. I'm sorry for this interruption, but I have to tell you something amazing that happened since our last story. I just can't wait to tell you what I know. Have you ever heard of animals talking? Well, in this story they do. Henry found out that his feather has even more magic than he knew. It not only lets him travel into books, it also makes his animal friends talk. Whoa! Isn't that amazing? Okay, now back to the story. Vroom, vroom, Henry said as he ran with his airplane. He laughed himself dizzy and fell into the soft grass. He then looked up to the sky and saw Birdie. How does Birdie fly like that? Henry asked. Birdie flew down next to him. What's that noise? She asked as she flew over the big tree in the backyard. Henry followed her. Why are you arguing? Birdie asked as she perched on the tree branch next to Curry. Curry thinks he knows how you fly, Dog Bear said. Henry took a seat on the ground beneath the tree branch. I do know. She flies because she's small, like me, Curry said. Let me show you. Curry took a leap from the tree branch. Help, I'm falling, Curry yelled. Dog Bear ran and caught Curry and then safely placed him down next to Henry. Thank you, Curry said. I told you, Dog Bear said. It's not about Birdie's size. It's because she flaps her wings. Show us then, Curry said. Dog Bear flapped and flapped his paws. Then Henry joined in running around flapping his arms. Nothing's happening, Henry said, laughing from all the fun he was having with his friends. Dog Bear laid on the ground tired. Birdie flew down and sat next to Dog Bear. That was a great try, my friend, Birdie said. If it's not being small or flapping, what makes you fly? Curry asked Birdie. I think I know, said Henry, pointing at Birdie as Birdie flew back onto the tree branch. Birdie has wings. Birdie smiled and she spread her beautiful blue feathers. Dog Bear and Curry looked up at Birdie, then at each other thinking about what Henry said. How can we prove it? Dog Bear asked. The library, of course, Birdie said before flying off. That's a great idea, Henry said. We have another investigation. Where are you all off to? Henry's mom asked. We're going to the library, Henry said. We're on a mission. Okay, I can walk you all over in a few minutes. While waiting for Mom, Henry grabbed his backpack. He checked inside to make sure he had all the supplies he needed. Feather, bookmark, check, Henry said. Don't forget my treats, Dog Bear yelled. Treats checked, Henry said. Don't forget your library card, Curry said. I can't forget that, Henry said, checking the backpack's front pocket. Got it. Henry, his mom, and friends walked to the library, which was down the street from Henry's house. Does Mrs. Simon know we're coming? Henry asked. You know Mr. Slink won't let Curry or Dog Bear in the library. Don't worry, Mom said. Mrs. Simon knows we're on our way. Dog Bear and Curry gave each other a high five. Henry laughed. Henry, his mom, and friends arrived at the library. Mrs. Simon, the children's librarian, met them at the side entrance so they wouldn't be seen by the library manager, Mr. Slink. He's a nice man, but made sure that the rules were followed. One of his rules is no furry friends. Hello, Ivy. It's lovely to see you again, and a few of my favorite visitors, Mrs. Simon said as she smiled. Hi, Mrs. Simon, Henry said. Thank you so much for helping them out, Henry's mom said. I'll be back in an hour to pick them up. She then reaches out to give Henry a hug and kiss. Have fun. Remember to listen to Mrs. Simon. We will, Henry said. Curry and Dog Bear walked slowly and quietly past Mr. Slink's office. His door was open. They could see Mr. Slink asleep at his desk. What is the question that you all are hoping to answer today? Mrs. Simon asked as they walked into the children's book section. We want to know how to fly like Birdie, Henry said. Dog Bear and Curry nodded in agreement. I have just the books to help you answer that question, Mrs. Simon said. Henry and his friends sat at a table while Mrs. Simon looked for the books. I think this book, Baby Loves Aerospace Engineering by Ruth Spiro, would be helpful, Mrs. Simon said. I'll be back in a few minutes with the other book. Henry pulled out his grandma's feather bookmark. Get ready! He then waved the feather over the book. As they entered the book, they heard someone explaining how the shape of a bird's wing helped it to fly. They listened to learn about how birds, rockets, and planes fly. Whoa, wings are important to fly, Dog Bear said. Both birds and planes have wings. But rockets don't have wings, Curry said. How can they fly? You're both right, Henry said. For birds, the shape of their wings is important, and for rockets and planes, they need an engine. While checking out the shape of the airplane wing, it suddenly took off. Hang on, guys, Henry yelled. I think we're going on a trip. Hold on. What's happening? Curry asked. I can't fly. We can't fly. I don't think this was a great idea, Dog Bear said as his fur blew in the wind. We need help. Look, Henry yells. Does that look like Birdie? My friends, I'm here to help, Birdie said. She safely places each of them down to the ground. Oh my, I knew you all wanted to fly, but not on the outside of an airplane, Birdie said. We just wanted to check the plane's wings and it just started flying, Curry said. I guess that's one way to learn how to fly, Birdie said, chuckling. I hear Mrs. Simon coming back. I think it's time for us to go. Henry then took his bookmark, and before they exited the book, Dog Bear saved Curry from taking a one-way trip on the rocket. That was amazing, Henry said. He then remembered that Mr. Slink might hear him and started to whisper, I love flying. How was your adventure? Mrs. Simon asked. Dog Bear and Curry noticed that Mrs. Simon was holding a new book. What is this book? Henry asked. It's Kite Flying by Grace Lynn, Mrs. Simon said. She placed the book on the table. We'll see you when we get back, Henry said as he touched the book with a feather bookmark. While in the book, they learned about the Chinese tradition of kite making and flying. How was your trip? Mrs. Simon asked. It was awesome, Henry and his friends said at the same time. What's going on here? Mr. Slink asked. You know this is a library and there are rules. Sorry, Mr. Slink, Henry said. We're sorry too, Dog Bear said. Talking animals in a library? Mr. Slink said, shocked. You know the rule, no pets, not even the ones that talk. Mr. Slink, they're just having fun, Mrs. Simon said. Couldn't you make an exception this one time? Mr. Slink pushed up his glasses that were falling down his nose. He then folded his arms and raised his eyebrows. This is what he did when he had something important to think about. I will make an exception this one time for you, Mrs. Simon. But from now on, Henry, you'll need to take your books home if you want to have your adventures. Yes, sir, Henry said. Have a good day, Mr. Slink said before leaving. But then he turned around. Henry, tell your grandmother I said hi. We miss her around here. I will, Henry said. Mrs. Simon waited until Mr. Slink was back at the library's front desk. He really likes his rules, she said. Yes, he does, Curry said. We won't be able to come back to the library. Let's look at the positive, Henry said. We can still go on our adventures. They all smiled. Did you find the answers to your question? Mrs. Simon asked. I think so. Thank you so much for helping us, Henry said. He saw his mom walking towards them and knew it was time to go. We'll see you next week, Mrs. Simon. I'm looking forward to it, Mrs. Simon said, smiling. When they returned home, weary but excited, the crew rushed up to Henry's father, who was in the backyard working in his garden. Please, please, please help us make a kite, Henry said with a big breath of anticipation. Henry's dad finished planting, then took Dog Bear into the house to bring back the tools they needed: sticks, paper, glue, and string. Henry and his friends helped his dad make the kite just like the ones made by his new friends in the book that he met. Henry helped his dad join the sticks together and glue the paper to the sticks. Lastly, they added the string to help them fly it. Mom told me you all wanted to know how Birdie flies, Dad said, helping Henry hold onto the kite. We learned that Birdie's wings and their shape are important to help her fly. The top is curved and the bottom is flat. When she flaps her wings, they help her to go higher, and I don't know if that's enough for flying kites. Kites can fly, but they don't have wings. Once the kite was high in the sky, Birdie flew next to the kite. You're pretty smart, said Dad. That's right. For birds and planes, wings are important to fly, but not for kites. For birdie, planes, or kites to stay up in the air above the wings or kite is faster than the air below. The slower air underneath the wing or kite helps lift them up. That's cool, Henry said. I want to fly someday too. I can't wait to tell Grandma what I did today. Later that evening, after dinner and getting ready for bed, Henry's mom helped him FaceTime with his grandmother. Hello, sweetie, Grandma said. I'm excited to hear about today's adventure. We learned how to fly, Henry said, and the feather worked. You sound like you doubted it would work, Grandma said. I didn't know if it would still work since you're not here, Henry said, looking sad. I miss you. I miss you too, but I will always be here for you. I left the feather bookmark for you to always have me with you. I keep it next to my bed on top of my books, Henry said. I can't wait to hear all about your adventures, Grandma said. Henry began to tell Grandma about his adventures. He looked over and saw Birdie and Curry outside the window and Dog Bear laying in his dog bed. Grandma sat back and drank her tea as she listened. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Henry's Library. We hope you and your family enjoyed this story and learned something new, and maybe an idea or two that you want to investigate and learn about by reading books. Join us next week for another adventure with Henry, Curry, Dog Bear, and Birdie. Parents, please rate, review, subscribe, and share the podcast. And we'd love to hear what your kids are learning and like about the show. You can send us a message via email to hi@whatisblack.co. You can also go to our website, whatisblack.co/Henry's Library Podcast, to see the books mentioned in this episode and links to fun activities. We encourage you to read the books from the episode together as a family. Books mentioned in this episode can be found at your local library or bookstore. We love all bookstores and hope that you consider checking out your local independent bookstores to support them.